Okay, this is your full moon report for the full moon Virgo eclipse that is coming in early in the morning on March 14th. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, so this is the chart for the full moon. Now, wow, just a preface for this reading, we are moving through some of the most wild astrological times that I have personally charted as an astrologer, and I've been charting the transits since 2020. So this is some of the craziest sort of charts that I've seen since 2020. There were some moments in 2020 where we had really, really wild astrology going on, which obviously was mirroring the world situation. But this astrology, it's different in the sense that what I feel currently with the chart is that it's much less of, while the astrology of 2020 was very much about an external transformation that was happening with our society at large and our systems at large. What we're seeing with these charts right now, specifically in this month of March, is that we're seeing a very, very massive shift happening, but it's an internal shift. So this is a collective experience that we're all going through. We're all very much going through it in our own individual and unique way. And I'll talk about how to look for where this is in your chart as well, so that you can kind of understand what's showing up for you specifically. But let's dive into this full moon. So we have the full moon here at 23 degrees of Virgo, and this is a full moon eclipse, meaning this is not just a full moon, it's a full moon happening at the nodes. So whenever we have eclipses, first and foremost, I want you to understand that eclipses illuminate the nodes. And if you've been following my astrology for any amount of time, you'll know that the nodes are these portals to our past lives, our karma, and the energy that we're here to clear in this lifetime. And I really believe on a soul level, we're all here to clear karma. And the North Node representing where we're growing into, where our greatest expansion and challenge and ultimately our destiny lies. And so these 2 points in the chart, they really are sort of like these portals where we can access different timelines. And so when we're accessing the South Node, we're accessing past timelines, and we're accessing the North Node, we're accessing future timelines. And when we have a lunar event, like a new or a full moon, at these 2 points in the sky, we are opening the doorways to past and future timelines. Okay, so that's something to just be aware of with eclipses in general. Eclipses are very unstable events. So there's not a lot of sort of like grounded energy here. This is why, you'll hear astrologers say, like, you don't necessarily want to manifest with an eclipse, because whatever you're putting out there into the universe, it's like, it's sort of on this very chaotic or inherently ungrounded foundation. So, all of that being said, let's look into this eclipse in particular. So we've got the moon here, 23 degrees Virgo, and it's here with the South Node. This is a South Node lunar eclipse, meaning that with a full moon in general, we're always sort of having some kind of illumination, some kind of, the full moon illuminates, it brings light. And with it being at the South Node specifically, this is very much about releasing the past, okay? So we're very much in this like heavy karmic clearing energy right now. Before we jumped on the recording, we were speaking about the energy of sort of like death that we're in right now. And that's very, very much the energy of this particular chart. We are clearing karma right now. So any of you, if you've been tested recently, specifically around like what I've noticed with my clients, with my friends, with myself, is that whatever your biggest trigger pattern is, so whether that's like a self-sabotaging pattern or like whatever your biggest trigger pattern is, whatever your biggest self-sabotage, your limiting belief, your like kind of core wound vibes is 100% getting tested and triggered for a lot of people right now. So that can look like things abruptly shifting A lot of people are getting the foundation sort of stripped from under them, especially around something that you know is not fully in alignment, but it provides a sense of security or stability, or a sense of like, when I have this thing, then the future feels known, or the unknown feels more manageable. These types of situations, whether it's a job, whether it's like a money source or like a money portal, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a relationship pattern, whether it's a mindset, like whatever it is for you, it's likely being presented, or it's been presented, or it's going to be presented as sort of like a test. Like, will you fall back into this pattern, or are you ready to sort of transcend that pattern and evolve? That's the overarching energy of this eclipse. It's very much like choose your own adventure, in terms of like, are you going to keep repeating this karmic pattern, or are you going to step into a new timeline? And eclipses always kind of carry that vibe, but this one is, the intensity of it and the importance of it and the significance of what we choose is amplified. And I'm going to go into why all of that is. So many, many reasons. But let's bring our attention to the sun, which is, you know, the opposite of this full moon. And the sun is here with Saturn, with the North Node, and with Neptune. So big moment here at the North Node. We have lots of energy at the North Node. We've got the sun, we've got Saturn, and we've got Neptune all at the North Node. So the potential on the other side of this death, on the other side of letting go of whatever this old pattern thing is, there's like this very, very expansive potential, because all of this is happening in Pisces. And Pisces is the most expansive sign of the zodiac. It's where we transcend all of the other zodiacs in the wheel. It's where we complete the sort of like karmic timeline. And so this being in the last decan, the last 10 degrees of Pisces specifically, all of this is in the last 10 degrees of Pisces. This is like ultimate transcendence potential. There's huge, huge, infinite expansion potential. We're not there yet. It's not like we don't have it clear what it is, because Neptune's there. Neptune's creating fog, Neptune's creating illusion. So it's almost like, the way I want to put this into words for you is like, we're going somewhere really big. There's a big growth. We're feeling pressure to step into it with Saturn being there. We're feeling the expansiveness of it with Neptune being there. We're feeling lit up to pursue it with the sun being there, but we don't know what it is. We don't really know where we're going. We know that there's this like there's something big coming. That's the feeling, is like, there's something big coming. There's a rebirth coming. There's a new energy coming in, but we've got to be clearing this karma in order to step into it. We've got to be sort of passing those karmic tests, and the universe is going to throw you situations that are going to amplify whatever it is your wound is, whatever it is that your stuck mental pattern is. Like, that's a big one, because this is Virgo and this is the shadow of Virgo. So we're really dealing with the mind. We're dealing with rigidity, stuckness, like any mental patterns that we're just like, but this is the way it is. Any type of mental control, any control in general. You know, shadows of Virgo can be like anxiety. All of this is coming from too much mental obsession, mental thinking, mental sort of rumination over something. We need to let that pattern die so that we can expand into all this Piscean energy. So we're very much being challenged and tested in that. And the ruler of this full moon is Mercury. So here's Mercury. Mercury's at 9 degrees of Aries, just conjunct with our Venus retrograde. So we're very much in the Venus retrograde energy now. Venus is going to be retrograde for another month still. So we're still very much learning relationship lessons, which indicates to me that for a lot of people, this mental construct, pattern, story, belief, limitation, self-sabotage thing that we're letting go of is related to relationships. Because here is the ruler of the South Node and the ruler of the moon with Venus, who's in retrograde. She's reconsidering relationships. She's restructuring all of her relationships. She's like, what do relationships even mean to me? What do I care about? What do I value? What brings me joy? What brings me pleasure? What brings me beauty? And with her being retrograde in Aries, she's very much reconsidering her own value, how she's valuing herself, and whether or not that's being reflected back to her through relationships. So relationships where there's not like where our worth is not being valued, that's really going to be coming up for a lot of people. And so the other thing about Mercury, other than being conjunct Venus retrograde here, is that Mercury is about to go retrograde in this chart. So one day after this eclipse, Mercury will station retrograde. Mercury is already essentially retrograding during this eclipse. Mercury is in this like pivotal moment of about to turn around. It's already at a standstill. And so this is really indicating that there's some kind of mental loop from the past, an old story, an old pattern, an old belief, likely around relationships. For a lot of people, it could be finance as well, because Venus also rules money, and you know what we value. And that pattern is being sort of illuminated by this eclipse. It's being revealed and it's being asked to be shed. There's a big transformational component to this eclipse because we've got this eclipse in a beautiful trine to Uranus. So again, pushing that transformation forward. Uranus can bring sort of an abrupt, unexpected, a sudden, a shocking, a revelatory vibe. So again, that illumination that could come under the eclipse. We're recording this a little bit before the eclipse, but we're very much already feeling the energy. And then the other thing that's happening is that the moon is making a sextile, a loose sextile, but yeah, it's still within 5 degrees to Mars, who it has finally made it out of 17 degrees Cancer and is now at 18 degrees. Mars is finally starting to actually move forward after its retrograde. And so that can be creating this sort of like feeling that we want to get going on something. But again, we don't really know, like we're all heading towards the North Node, but we don't really know what that means yet. We don't really know where we're going. That's going to become much more clear when we get to mid-April. We have a full moon event on April 12th, which is going to be the end of Venus retrograde. Venus will go direct that day. That's going to be a full moon in Libra, which is Venus ruled. So we're going to have a lot of clarity. Venus will be conjunct Saturn when she goes direct. She's going to know what she's after and be like very clear about her long-term vision. Right now, we don't have that long-term vision. We're very much in the release, the shedding, the clearing of this karmic process. And the best sort of advice that I have for working with this astrology in general is to surrender to the unknown. We need to be in this place of like blind faith and trust in a higher vision, in a higher timeline that we don't currently have access to. It's kind of like we need to be willing to release our plan and trust God's plan, is basically the vibe of this whole chart. And we need to also be really willing to face our own shadows around that Virgo archetype. Again, control can be a big one. We may be very well looking at patterns of control within relationships. So if that's something that, you know, you have a history with, or there's like, we all have some kind of conditioning around control dynamics within relationships. So that could be a big one. Again, with the Aries, it could be around like self-value in relationships, but there's some sort of self, you know, so Virgo can be very like masochistic. It can be very like self critical, very like self-sabotaging, very like almost even violent towards the self. That sort of martyrdom of like self-sacrifice in like a very sort of the intent might be noble, but it's like we need to clear all of that frequency and really step into the potential of the North Node in Pisces. And we've been talking about the North Node in Pisces. This is like awakening of our spiritual gifts. This is stepping into, again, that trust in the divine plan. Pisces understands that everything that's happening is always happening perfectly. There's never anything happening that's incorrect because it's happening. And if it's happening, then it's meant to be happening. And so tapping into that full surrender and trust that whatever is occurring is meant to be occurring. That's very much Piscean. We're seeing massive spiritual awakening collectively right now. So this is sort of that internal shift that I was speaking to. Like astrology is really intense for that internal process. So those of us who are already on a spiritual path, like we might be experiencing the next level of that growth or like an integration of it to some extent. But a lot of people are likely sort of having big experiences around waking up right now, which can be very destabilizing for a lot of people. I would assume that if it's happening under this astrology, could be very destabilizing for a lot of people. But we want to be in that energy of understanding that, again, whatever's happening is already perfect. There's nothing that we need to control. We don't need to control the timeline. We need to be sort of in this place of trusting our intuition more, trusting our inner guidance. And it's not to say that we're not taking any action or making any moves, but the moves that we are making are coming from this deep well of inner knowing, this very like intuitive, connected to source place. And so that requires us to be sort of disciplined in our spiritual practice, which is, this full moon is opposing Saturn. There's a challenge there. There's an energy of like we're being pushed to face something, and this can be showing up like there's not just one way that this will show up for you. So looking at all the different ways that this could be showing up in your life. And then the last thing I will speak to around how to look for this in your own chart is looking at where you have late degree Virgo in your chart. That's where this full moon eclipse is happening for you. So what house that's happening in, and if you have planets there, and then where you have late degree Pisces, that's where all of this is happening, which is like big. So if you have planets there, what house that's in for you. And then also looking at where 10 degrees Aries is, because that's where both Venus stationed retrograde and where Mercury will station retrograde. The first 10 degrees of Aries is all being hit by the retrogrades. So if you have planets there, what house is that for you? The other thing that I haven't spoken to yet, maybe in any of these videos, is that these retrogrades and all of this energy really is touching this threshold between early degrees of Aries and late degrees of Pisces. And this threshold is the rebirth threshold. So we are very much approaching this massive energy of rebirth. This is where when the sun moves through this threshold, this is the new year. Astrologically, this is when we have spring equinox. And so the sun moves into Aries and we rebirth for the year. This is also on a larger context where the soul transcends the body and then reincarnates into a new life. So this is very much the degrees of the chart where we are experiencing rebirth. And within the month of March, all of these planets, like literally all of these planets other than Saturn, so the sun, Neptune, Venus, and Mercury are all going to transition through this rebirth portal during the month of March. So this is really, really big, significant stuff. We are shedding so much spiritually right now, and we are creating space for a new beginning that's going to be coming in April. It's not going to be coming right away. We still have the rest of March and the beginning of April to get through, but that second week of April is really the rebirth portal. That second week of April between March 6th and 12th is when Mercury will go direct, Venus will go direct, and Saturn will come into conjunction with the node. And we're going to have a full moon, like I mentioned, in Libra. That's going to be at the same time that Venus goes direct. So we're going to have like all systems go. And that is when the rebirth is going to be fully activated. All of Aries season is very much that rebirth energy, but mid-April is when we're really going to start to see that energy to move forward on whatever it is that we're right now reevaluating. Like right now we're in eclipses, we're in retrogrades, we're like, we don't really know what's going on. We're shedding, we're doing the spiritual work, we're clearing karma, but we don't really know where it's all going. We need to be very present to that process so that when the rebirth opportunity presents in April, we're ready to step into that timeline. And that's exactly why I chose April 6th to 12th for the Wild Woman retreat for this year. That's when we're doing the retreat, is literally during that rebirth portal. So I think that's pretty much what I have for you on this eclipse. Yeah, be gentle with yourself. Eclipse care in general is like, it's a powerful and potent time to do your spiritual practices, do breath work, do meditation, any type of practices that you can do to connect internally, any type of practices that you can do to help you release energy. So taking baths, doing some kind of like any kind of ritual that helps you clear energy, whether that's fire element, water element, having body work done is a really nice thing. So anything that can help you kind of purify the vessel, that's very much the energy of Virgo, purification. And we are very much in that purification process right now. And we'll be in this sort of energy of this eclipse. Full moons themselves, we feel them over the course of a couple of days. Eclipses are even bigger events. So we're definitely already feeling this one as I record this. And we're going to be feeling it throughout the 13th, throughout the 14th, probably even throughout the weekend. And then we are in the 2-week portal between eclipses, which is a really pivotal time where we're kind of in this void space. And this is, again, those two doorways to future timeline, past timeline are both very much open during that time. So the mundane actions that we take in response to everyday life, in response to just things that are going on in your everyday life, be very intentional with your actions during this time. It's not a time to just like be on autopilot. It's a time to be very, very intentional with how you're navigating these energies and making sure that you're essentially responding to everything that you can from that sort of higher self integrated place of like seeing the test, seeing the trigger, and responding from a higher place. And like that's what allows you to actually shift into that new timeline. So that's the eclipse. I hope everyone, just take care. And it's gonna be a big one. We're here for it, and take care.